Some mornings feel like a slow-moving postcard from a life well lived. I wake before the sun, ease stiff knees into my favorite rocking chair, and wrap weathered fingers around a mug that still advertises a long-closed diner from my college days. The lake behind my home lies silver gray and silent, mirroring the calm that comes only after you've spent decades chasing deadlines, raising kids, and watching the world spin faster than you ever thought it could. On those hushed dawns, the only sounds are the warble of a meadowlark and the soft creak of the dock settling into its posts, reminding me that, for once, time is on my side. It was precisely during one of those gentle, hard-earned mornings that the spell broke. I had just lifted my cup for a second appreciative sip when a furious screech sliced through the tranquility. Karen Henderson, Queen Bee of Pine Ridge, keeper of grievances, and self-appointed guardian of property values, was screaming herself hoarse on the far side of my brand-new privacy wall. The 12-foot structure of treated cedar and reinforced concrete towered like a monument to justice, obliterating Karen's $1 million lake view in the same elegant stroke that preserved mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me share how Pine Ridge's most notorious HOA president discovered that karma sometimes arrives disguised as a perfectly legal construction project. When I bought my modest 3-bedroom ranch on Lakeside Drive, I believed I'd finally found a quiet corner of paradise. The property backed directly onto Crystal Lake, complete with a private dock and beach access lovingly tended by the previous owners for 30 years. Neighbors waved from manicured lawns during the walk-through, and the world looked friendly enough. Except for the woman across the cul-de-sac who studied my every movement through lace curtains. That was Karen Henderson, ensconced in a gaudy 5,000-square-foot McMansion that lorded over the street from its perch on a gentle rise. She enjoyed a sweeping view of the lake but, crucially, lacked any direct path to its shimmering edge. The developer had situated her lot just far enough back that she either had to cut across my yard or trek half a mile to the public beach. The first few months passed in blissful, almost retired contentment. Weekends found me kayaking, grilling for friends who appreciated a simple burger more than any upscale steakhouse, and soaking up the peace I'd spent 20 years in corporate accounting to afford. Then came the Saturday morning knock on my door. Karen stood there in designer athleisure, clipboard poised, smile stretched tight against freshly Botoxed skin. She introduced herself as HOA president and rattled off a litany of violations. My kayak rack sat 2 inches too close to the property line, my deck furniture didn't come from the approved vendor list, and the native wildflowers adorning my garden allegedly violated subsection 12.4 of the landscaping guidelines. I nodded politely, made the adjustments, and foolishly believed the matter settled. How naive I was. Soon afterward, strangers began wandering through my backyard, snapping photos of the lake and lounging on my dock. When I confronted one couple, they apologized and showed me an online listing for the Henderson Lakeside Retreat, which advertised exclusive lake access, complete with photos of my dock, my beach, and even my kayak in the background. $300 a night. Blood pounded in my ears as I marched across the street, catching Karen power washing her driveway in the midday heat. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head and explained, condescension dripping, that the lake view was a shared neighborhood asset meant to boost everyone's property values. If I blocked access or complained, she would fine me under the neighborhood harmony clause. Then she smiled and suggested I be grateful her high-quality guests graced our community. That evening, while other residents settled into cozy living room routines, I pored over the HOA bylaws like a retiree dissecting the sports pages. To my delight, Karen had overlooked several key provisions. Property owners retained the right to erect privacy structures, fences, walls, hedges, within specific height and material guidelines. An even better discovery, a grandfather clause protected property rights established before the HOA's formation. The next morning, I rang my college buddy Derek, now a property law guru. He couldn't stop laughing. Karen was trespassing, committing fraud, and generally begging for a lawsuit. But Derek proposed a more poetic remedy. Thus began a 2-week operation as meticulous as any audit I ever performed. I hired a surveyor, secured every permit, and contracted a crew capable of erecting a wall in one weekend. An architect drafted plans to maximize privacy and lake view blockage while fitting squarely within HOA limits, 12 feet tall, approved materials, neutral color palette, in short, perfection. Memorial Day weekend arrived, Karen's favorite time to host the annual HOA barbecue. At 7 a.m. Saturday, construction trucks rolled in. By noon, posts were set in concrete. By evening, the frame stood tall. Sunday morning brought cedar panels, Sunday afternoon saw the finishing touches. I admired the result, a masterpiece of malicious compliance that preserved my panoramic vista while granting Karen a prime view of natural cedar planks. I was halfway through a celebratory beer when her shriek shattered the twilight. She stormed across the street, party guests in tow, her face oscillating between rage red and panic purple. She threatened lawsuits, arrests, community-wide retaliation. Calmly, I handed her a folder containing every permit, the surveyor's report, highlighted sections of the bylaws, screenshots of her fraudulent rental ads, and a cease and desist letter on Derek's firm's letterhead. As she flipped through the pages, her fury curdled into dread. Guests exchanged nervous glances, some pulled out phones to verify whether their own properties had been featured in her listings. One board member muttered about the legal consequences of false advertising, another wondered if HOA insurance covered fraud committed by its president. Karen demanded an emergency board meeting to force removal of my wall. Reluctantly, members agreed to convene, but enthusiasm was scarce. When Tuesday night's meeting commenced, I arrived armed with a slide deck, testimonials from baffled renters, time-stamped security footage of trespassers, and a succinct timeline of Karen's intimidation tactics. Heads nodded as I spoke. Stories surfaced of Karen overstepping boundaries with other lakefront owners. One elderly couple described strangers picnicking in their garden under the impression it was community space. Karen's rebuttal was a stammered melange of buzzwords: maximized property values, community synergy, shared amenities. When asked about undeclared rental income, she fell silent. The treasurer requested financial records, and the room bristled with quiet satisfaction. The vote to remove her as HOA president was unanimous. The board issued a formal statement affirming every owner's right to privacy and prohibiting any advertising of amenities not legally possessed. News of Karen's downfall rippled through local real estate circles. Her listings vanished from vacation rental platforms, guests demanded refunds, and the state attorney general's office opened a fraud investigation. 3 months later, while I spread mulch beneath the lilacs, a process server approached, looking for Karen. She faced lawsuits from disgruntled renters and potential fines exceeding $200,000. The last time I saw her, she was loading boxes into a moving truck, foreclosure notice taped to her front door. As the truck rumbled off, she hurled a final glare at my cedar fortress. I raised my coffee in a silent toast. She answered with a single, ungracious gesture before disappearing from Pine Ridge forever. The wall still stands today, its cedar grain silvering gracefully under sun and rain, a steadfast reminder that respect for boundaries, whether wooden or human, is the true cornerstone of any community. And on quiet mornings, as steam curls from my mug and the lake glimmers like polished pewter, I can almost hear the echo of that first shriek, fading like so many other petty nuisances into the peaceful hush that comes to those of us who finally earned it.